Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to re-share my screen and hopefully everything stays stable now.
Yeah, we can say that, Jen.
Thanks. The recording has started. So thank you everyone for attending. That was a little bit of a panic just there. Getting some feedback from someone. Welcome to our Open Access Week event for 2023. First, before we start, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Open Access Week gives us the opportunity to discuss all things open science and open research. And we continue to actively advocate and engage with outside people to discuss open science for the good of ECU research and ECU performance. And we can see in our policy that we do encourage open access research where possible. And this is to help us in our active impact and the progression of our research. It's also part of our ECU research plan for 2022 and 2026, as Caroline pointed out to us in our presentation last year. This year, as I said, it gives us an opportunity to discuss all things that are related to ECU community. So I've asked Jun Wen to give us a presentation about using ChatGPT and how it may impact the open research landscape. So if I hand over now to Jun and his presentation, and then after that we'll start some discussion and hear about other happenings around ECU in relation to open research and the use of ChatGPT. So if I stop sharing, Jun, and you can share your slides.
Sure, no problem. Okay. Share my screen. So hello, Jen, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
And see my screen? Okay, yep. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, cool, great. Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So thanks for the introduction from Jennifer. It's my pleasure to join ECU's 2023 International Open Access Week and share some thoughts on using artificial intelligence or AI and how these tools might affect open access. I'm Dr. Jun Wen from the School of Business and Law. I'm a lecturer in tourism and hospitality management. And we'll be talking today about the risks and the rewards, a critical perspective on using ChatGPT in interdisciplinary research. So for me, it is quite interesting to discuss AI tools like ChatGPT and other cutting-edge technologies. Personally, I'm fairly old-fashioned in my day-to-day life, but cannot turn a blind eye to the types of developments. Tools like ChatGPT have started to influencing people's life in different ways. So my presentation today is partly informed by my recent publication with Professor Wei Wang, a faculty member in medical science at ECU, on the future of ChatGPT in academic publishing. Our article guided the creation of this presentation. I should say that I'm not an expert on AI tools, including ChatGPT, so the information I'm about to share is based on my personal experiences as users, educator, and researcher. And it is very important to know that I did not use any AI tools, including ChatGPT, to create content for my today's presentation. So this presentation will last around 25 minutes. It includes 3 sections. A brief introduction to ChatGPT for those who might be unfamiliar with it, and an overview of the risks or rewards of using ChatGPT in academic research, and a discussion of potential future trends in AI and open access publishing. ChatGPT is an AI-driven natural language processing tool developed by OpenAI. It's designed to generate human-like text response to prompts. ChatGPT is based on the Transformer, a deep learning architecture, and has been trained on huge amounts of internet text data to learn different language patterns and talk about different topics. This advanced language model supports multiple languages and is commonly applied to chatbot development, text generation, text summarization, machine translation, and many other tasks. Since its release on November 2022 last year, ChatGPT has infiltrated many areas of our lives. It shows certain promise, such as in terms of the higher productivity and information accessibility. But it has also sparked concern about job displacement and data security. These prospects have aroused debates around ChatGPT in all walks of life. The academic community is no exception. There is significant controversy about potential impact of ChatGPT on academic publishing. Some researchers believe that ChatGPT will enable innovation. However, others say it will stifle creativity and undermine academic integrity. Its use is particularly debatable in the healthcare realm. Given these controversies, it's worth asking, is ChatGPT revolutionizing healthcare research or putting it at risk? So here's a snapshot of our invited commentary on the future of ChatGPT in academic publishing. My co-author, Professor Wei Wang, and I focused on clinical and translational medicine in this article. ChatGPT is an emerging technology that offers potential benefits for healthcare research. This type of research often involves analyzing large volumes of literature and data, which can be time-consuming. ChatGPT may offer a less tedious, more automated way to retrieve, filter, and extract information. The results could help review new ideas for healthcare stakeholders, including policymakers, researchers, practitioners, and patients. AI might also aid researchers in drug design and screening, ultimately accelerating drug development. For example, ProGen is a language model that can generate protein sequences, which demonstrate predictable functions with large protein families. In addition, ChatGPT can serve as a supporting tool for study design, statistical analysis, and grammar checking to help lighten researchers' workloads. In short, ChatGPT can facilitate healthcare research by enabling more efficient, novel approaches. Research naturally involves writing. So how might AI enhance written communication? So based on some literature, AI can potentially reduce the effort associated with writing in different ways. So for example, number one is error detection and correction. So AI can quickly identify and correct errors, typos, and inconsistencies. It can also suggest writing-related improvements, but it is important to review ChatGPT's outputs because the tool is not infallible. Grammar and style suggestions. AI can analyze text and provide feedback about grammar, sentence structure, spelling, punctuation, and word choice. Citation analysis assistance. Although AI can find and summarize citations, it cannot yet search for actual citations and instead may fabricate them. Proofreading and improving flow. AI can help streamline the proofreading process and improve the flow, clarity, and the readability of written information. Formatting assistance. AI can format documents according to the publisher's requirements to help ensure an article is ready for publication. But again, it's important to cross-check the output with the journal specifications in case some details are overlooked. The last one is plagiarism detection. So AI can detect instances of plagiarism in written work. Along with written communication, so how might AI enhance oral communication? So AI can help with oral presentations by allowing for quicker content creation and editing in following ways. The first is creating visually appealing presentations. AI can improve the visual aspects of presentations, helping to communicate more effectively with an audience. It offers a wide selection of templates, fonts, and images to choose from. AI can also provide features like theme customization, easy text editing, and the animation option to make a presentation stand out. The second, improving audience engagement. So future AI-based tools might use motion detection and facial recognition to track audience engagement during oral presentations. Presenters could then customize their materials and based on audience members' attention to ensure the most important points and information will not be missed out. The last is automatic transcription. AI-based search recognition tools can automatically transcribe live and remote speech, providing an accurate record of presentations. Speakers can then more easily review and improve their work. So how can AI enhance research? So AI-based tool holds a great potential for research in fields such as hand surgery, as a case in point in this presentation now. If used properly and accurately, these tools may improve the quality and effectiveness of patient care in different ways. For example, the first is data management analysis. AI can sift through massive amounts of data more effectively than humans. It can also analyze large volumes of data more quickly than people. Second is statistics. AI can write the code required for statistical analysis using specialized statistical and graphic software, saving a lot of time. Third is simulation and testing. So AI can be used to simulate and test the complex procedures more efficiently and accurately than ever before. The ChatGPT has become popular in numerous academic disciplines. Its benefits and risks thus extend to interdisciplinary research. So I recently read an article from Times Higher Education, as shown in this slide. John Ross, an Asia-Pacific editor, asked whether interdisciplinarity is new. It probably is not, but that depends on how we use it to achieve our research goals across different disciplines. Personally speaking, and having performed study integrating tourism, marketing, and medical science, I'm convinced that interdisciplinary research is beneficial. It fosters knowledge exchange across disciplines regarding the same topics. It also sparks innovative responses to age-old problems, such as in health research, focusing on intervention and treatment for mental disorders. It promotes thinking outside the box. And finally, it enables academics to go beyond the bounds of their disciplines to examine topics by using diverse perspectives and methodologies to solve problems. So despite its potential, ChatGPT poses significant research-based challenges. I have used healthcare as a case in point here. First of all, ChatGPT's information is not necessarily the most up-to-date, and the lack of new data can seriously impede progress in a rapidly changing field like healthcare. Timely data allow healthcare researchers to better understand trends in disease prevalence, identify risk factors, and design interventions to optimize healthcare delivery and clinical outcomes. Over-reliance on outdated data from ChatGPT can guide researchers in the wrong direction, resulting in unnecessary resource waste. There may even be serious consequences for personal and public health. Meanwhile, ChatGPT is powerful for summarizing information online, but its answers are not always factual. Even OpenAI admits that ChatGPT sometimes writes plausible sounding but incorrect or nonsensical answers. This information is common in large language models and is known as artificial hallucination. These inaccurate responses are not easy to identify, especially when AI draws from unclear information sources and fabricated references. So they are stark dangers for medical research. As a driver of innovation, healthcare research plays a critical role in scientific development. It informs clinical practice, such as disease diagnosis, prevention, and treatment. It also guides the creation of public health policies and resource allocation. This kind of research is meant to improve health outcomes and build more functional healthcare systems. Yet inaccurate AI-generated information can undermine the reliability and validity of healthcare studies. Consequences include academic mishaps, misinformed medical decisions and policies, and even compromised health outcomes or unbalanced healthcare networks. Erroneous knowledge can mislead the public and impair their health literacy if widely disseminated. Plus, inaccurate information can have long-term negative impacts on public health. The literature has revealed other risks of using AI in research too, including AI-powered tools collect vast amounts of personal data, which might threaten people's privacy and security when installing these tools on their devices. The cost of implementing this technology may unfairly advantage more privileged members of society. Research might use AI without fully understanding its limitations or its capacity for incorrect responses. So their publication may then contain false information. For example, some references generated by ChatGPT do not exist. Researchers are responsible for verifying them. Potential ethical issues apply when entering patient data into large language models, which are designed to learn from inputted text. AI lacks human emotions that are necessary for effective teaching and learning. The human connection between a teacher and the student is paramount. Hidden curriculum, which include unspoken values or rules, can often only be learned through interpersonal interaction in social environments. The last ChatGPT is trained on the internet, which is many Western initiative. These types of tools may therefore reflect societal biases and stereotypes. Using AI in multidisciplinary research comes with some additional questions for us to think about. For example, first one, how can researchers from different disciplines reach a consensus on using ChatGPT or other AI tools in a professional manner? Second, how can researchers across the disciplines develop clear guidelines on using ChatGPT or other AI tools for research purposes? And is it even possible to develop guidelines for interdisciplinary research when using ChatGPT? I believe we have more than this question to think about before we using ChatGPT for research properly. ChatGPT can negatively affect science. As discussed in the Nature editorial published this year, the article described how researchers, educators, and ChatGPT need to carefully consider how to use AI tools ethically and properly. So personally, I was not surprised to learn that ChatGPT delivers readable students' reports and other type of assignments. It can even compose good enough research abstracts or literature reviews for academics. However, so when people use ChatGPT for these purposes, but in a simplistic fashion, a question emerges. Do tools like ChatGPT threaten transparent science? For example, ChatGPT could produce unreliable information for diverse audiences. Even some academics have kindly given credit to ChatGPT by way of formal authorship when publishing articles. So other issues associated with ChatGPT in the academic community concerns research ethics and integrity. For instance, can researchers using ChatGPT to paraphrase information in articles? Is it ethical or acceptable to do so? Could using ChatGPT for academic writing stir up legal issues involving intellectual property or copyright? And briefly talking about the potential positives and the negatives of using ChatGPT in academic publishing, I would like to now discuss AI tools in relation to open access or OA publishing. First, let's quickly review the definition of open access. OA refers to free access to information and the unrestricted use of electronic resources for everyone. Any kind of digital content can be OA, from text to data to software, audio, video, and multimedia. While most content is text only, text can be also combined with image, data, and other different kinds of code. OA can further apply to long-scholarly content like music, movies, and novels. As OA in academic publishing becomes more common, open science venues could give us some insight into its role in knowledge exchange. So based on the UNESCO open science venues, it includes 4 dimensions. The first one is quality and integrity. Science should be high quality. It should also scrutinize by bringing together different knowledge sources. Scientific methods and outputs should be more transparent as well. Connective benefits. Science is a public good that belongs to all of humanity. Equity and fairness. All producers and the consumers of knowledge should have equitable, fair, and reciprocal access to science, regardless of their location, nationality, race, age, gender, income, socioeconomic standing, career stage, among other classifications. So lastly, diversity and inclusiveness. Research topics and outputs should feature a diversity of knowledge, practices, workflows, and language. Now let's talk more about data sharing and AI tools in academic publishing. The first principle is to share fair data. Reusable data can encourage research replication using different samples to promote discoveries. Good science should be replicated to validate findings, although this task is more common in the hard sciences. So when thinking about sharing data through AI tools such as ChatGPT, an interesting question is this: should we create a new OA license for AI tools? it is essential to be aware of potential legal issues, such as copyrights and intellectual property. When using AI tools to share data, we need to consider possible harms arising from biased outputs, along with accusation of cheating and with generative AI. Last, this is very important for scientists and the public to understand what AI tools can and cannot do through participating in professional training. When we're prepared, we can all benefit from this technology with fewer potential issues for academic publishing and other matters. A recent discussion by the Higher Education Leadership Initiative about AI and open science revealed two main advantages for the global science of AI tools. The first, there is a huge potential to help solve big problems by accessing diverse data sets and information without restrictions. And the second, there is an indirect incentive for data sharing, which will enable more people and countries to capitalize on the benefits of AI and open science at large. However, the cost associated with the global science of AI tools also including the following two aspects. First, using generative AI chatbots could undermine trust in science. Hallucinations distort what is real and trustworthy. And the second, researchers may be less willing to share data without compensation and without some form of accountability that their work will not be misinterpreted or misused. Experts are starting to consider what is like to come for OA with AI tools. For example, the cost of OA publishing are still very high, and some prohibitive in countries where OI funding is lacking. Addressing this situation in the AI era calls for a group effort from the academic community. As the European Commission stated in 2018, trends in open data and data sharing will involve machine learning. Proper training up to usable standards is necessary based on the vast volumes of data available. Data validity and trustworthiness are of high importance when addressing open science with AI tools. The capability of AI to identify untrustworthy data will likely continue developing. So AI tools and OA publishing will continue to develop in academia. So today's talk covered a broad scope as shown by the different sources in the reference list. So thank you for your attention. And I look forward to learning what you think about AI tools and open and OA publishing. And thank you very much for your attention for my short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was great. Very thought-provoking information about open access and how it does interrelate or can interrelate with open science and AI tools. We're really fortunate today to have Professor Caroline Finch with us. So to start off some discussion, can I ask Caroline then, does she foresee any obstacles for the promotion and greater use of open access publishing? Or as we strongly promote our read and publish agreements available to the ECU researchers? After this, if I can ask Chris to jump in and give us an overview of the work that he has been leading at ECU into ChatGPT.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that, that question. I have to say, when you suggested that as something for me to address last week, I thought, wow, I haven't thought about that before. So it was really intriguing, and I was really pleased to have the opportunity to muse about it over the past couple of days. But before I start, in addition to being a DVCR here, I'm actually the editor-in-chief of a Q1 journal, one published by the British Medical Journal House called Injury Prevention. I've been in that role since the start of 2023. And I thought I might actually tackle this question from the perspective of a journal editor, to give a different take on it, because I think John's already touched on so many important issues about using the tool, and there's so many overlaps with what I thought I'd share. But I will talk about it from the perspective of an editor of a top international journal in a rapidly evolving and developing field. So as you can imagine, the use of AI and these generative AI tools is really a great concern to journal editors across the world. But it is also fair to say that the use of AI isn't new in journal publishing or to editors, and it's long been embedded in our practices. For example, almost every journal now already uses tools such as iAuthenticate to check for plagiarism. We already use AI pattern recognition to identify potential reviewers for journals. We already recognise that many authors might use tools such as Grammarly to write their articles, and that's considered an authentic use of those sorts of AI tools. But what is different now is the acceleration of the use of AI, matched with deep learning, machine learning, and other techniques that are going to actually change the way that authors will use AI. So it's not just about the journals and the publishing houses and how we use the tools, but it's also about how the authors are going to use them before they even reach our desks as editors. Now, there's such a big concern. It's a global concern, as we've heard from June, a trend. And there is a united front across international groups of editors. So there are groups such as WAMI, which is the World Association of Medical Editors, which I'm a member, or COPE, a Committee on Publication Ethics, which are peak international bodies that are driving a lot of research publication and research publication ethics. And I've drawn on a lot of their material for the highlights that I want to bring to your attention today. Collectively, I think, though, that it'd be fair to say that these groups, WAMI, COPE, others, do see the use of generative AI tools generally as positively. It's seen as the next evolution in scientific publication because of its opportunities and threats. And it was interesting, one article I read over the weekend talked about the emergence of AI as the third significant wave in medical publishing. Whilst the example was in medical publishing, I think it applies elsewhere. Those of us who have been around medical and health research for as long as me will remember the good old days when we identified literature using something called Index Medicus. So you would go to a library and you'd scroll through published volumes of citations and documents that really listed the connections between articles. And that's how I identified those. And that was something that was established probably in the mid-1800s and was the most prominent way of identifying literature until probably about the early 2000s. In 2000, web-based tools became more prevalent, and people started to use tools like PubMed, which were an online computer program generated means of identifying literature, tracking citations, identifying papers that could be of relevance. But that still requires quite a bit of manual operational part of the authors. And now what we're seeing, AI is taking it away from that and making things more automated. So whilst this is a lot of opportunities, there are some threats, and John mentioned some of those, particularly around research integrity. But having, from an editor's point of view, having these generative AI tools is actually going to make it easier for us as editors to identify fraudulent papers, for example. But we are also aware that there are going to be new biases that continue to appear, or at least maybe they've been there for a long time and we're only able to recognise them now. So one question that editors ask around the world is, are we seeing more publication fraud, bad research integrity manifesting in our publications than before, or is it just easier to detect? I don't think we know the answer to that. It's probably, it may well be a bit of both. The other good advantage from an editor's point of view in terms of these AI tools, it is that it's going to make it easier for us to identify a whole stack of unsavory publication practices. So we're going to be able to use the pattern recognition capabilities of AI to better identify articles from predatory and pirate publishers, those that have been reviewed through fake reviewers, and the so-called paper mills where people pay for papers to be written for them. So it will be possible now for journal editors to better detect publishing cartels, image manipulation, and salami slicing. So whilst I don't expect any of this to be an issue for ECU because of our high standards of research integrity, but researchers and others who do have some doubtful practices are going to be more detectable now. So the key thing about these generative AI tools is that they can be used. They're used as something called training data to learn about the patterns, variations, and distributions in the pattern literature. They then use, or some of them then use things like deep learning to then generate their own so-called new content. But it's content at scale, and they draw on the existing media, and this can be text, graphics, audio, and video, all sorts of things, as John has also mentioned. So the key thing is that these are drawing on things called training sources with databases. And if those data sources and training data sets have inherent biases, then what comes out of AI is going to be biased as well. And this is one of the key things for researchers to be aware of, the biases that could inherently exist. So some of them could be to do with the data sources, some of them could be to do with the way that the programming was established. So, for example, if I draw on the medical literature, a lot of the published studies about drug trials were all conducted in white men. So what's their applicability of whether the drugs will work in people of other ethnicities or races? Also, very apparent omission from many of these works has been women of childbearing age, because no one wants to affect a pregnancy. So if studies only relate to old literature based on those sorts of studies, they're going to be biases. The other things too are in terms of the language. So if the programmers use language that only source literature, say from American journals, they're going to get a very biased picture around the world. So many tools will use open access data sources to get that training data. So research not published in open access form will be missed. So that's an argument in favour of us continuing to publish our work in open access, because we want it to be cited to make a difference. But the flip side to that is that anything that's available online electronically will be able to be used by an AI. So if you need to maintain confidentiality of your documents or data in any way, researchers need to be much more vigilant in their considerations about where to publish, because again, anything that's sent electronically is potentially accessible by AI. So internationally, journal editors and publishing bodies agree that there are three key principles around AI use in publication going forward. So accountability, the use of AI and the tools must be non-discriminatory, and it must be fair, so free of bias. It must be used with a great sense of responsibility, with recognition that there is always human agency and oversight in anything to do with AI use. Finally, transparency, and this is about relating to, I guess, things like the technical robustness, data governance, and acknowledgement of the tool use. But I guess more importantly, there is universal agreement by journal editors that it is the authors who are ultimately responsible for AI. They are responsible for what materials presented in their papers, and it's the authors who are responsible for all aspects to do with the data accuracy and any biases it contains, even when they've used AI to generate it. So I mentioned at the start that I'm an editor-in-chief of the publishing house, British Medical Journal, and that publishing house released its AI policy just last month. And there's a strong recommendation in it, I'm going to quote, that authors should consider including a summary of the input, output, and way in which the AI output was reviewed on the part of the authors. And interestingly, just in this past week, I'm actually having to invoke that particular principle for one of the papers that's currently under review in the journal. So look, to wrap up, I think from a journal editor's point of view, international publishing scene, the AI tools are here to stay, and they're going to be constantly evolving. They will positively impact publication practices and generating citations to research when it is published in open access fora. I think that's positive. But responsible use is going to probably require higher standards of research integrity or high evidence for that standard of research integrity. There's a well-known author, Ian Eders, who's done a lot of work, particularly focused on the medical literature, but also more broadly about scientific fraud and publishing errors. And he's already found that a large proportion of all existing literature may just not be replicable or may even be false. So if AI is drawing on that, how good is the information we're presenting? So as writing authors, when you write your papers, you need to be aware of those sorts of potential biases and others in the source materials for your AI tools, and you need to reference those. As publishing authors, I think you do want to continue to make your work as findable as possible through these open access forums and using ECU's participation in the transformative publishing agreements is a great way to do that. But also you probably need to think very carefully about what you need to protect. Is there any confidential information? And really make sure that what people are going to be able to glean from your open access items, once they are widely available, is what you'd like it to be. So I'll leave it there, Jennifer.
Thank you very thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you very much, Caroline and John. Jennifer's asked me to provide a bit of an overview of the research and research training working group that's supporting the AI across the university. So this is one of 3 separate working groups that are looking at AI across ECU. The other 2 looking at teaching and learning and curriculum design, and the final one being around organisational sustainability. So in the research and research training working group, there's some 18 members in that working group representing most schools, a number of the org units across the university and the library have representation on this group. We also have representation from PhD students, academic staff members and professional staff members across ECU. And this working group, or these 3 working groups, are all supporting a steering committee across ECU that is looking at producing a productive and ethical framework for the use of AI at ECU. And this framework, a draft of this framework has been established. And the framework is about empowering staff or stakeholders, not just staff and students, to exercise judgment in the use of AI. And the framework is currently being communicated across a whole range of different committees in the university. And I actually do think this is a very well-written document. It aligns with ECU's values of courage, integrity, personal excellence, rational inquiry, and respect. And that productive and ethical framework is also supported by a risk assessment matrix. And so those 2 documents are currently being communicated. I think there's probably some further changes to the risk assessment matrix that are required before it'll be communicated more widely across the university. But just in terms of the working group, what the working group has now been tasked with is really trying to provide some guidelines to stakeholders. And again, this is staff, students, and others, perhaps internal or external to ECU, on the responsible use of AI. And some of the guidelines that have already been adapted or changed are some that look at things like the thesis examination guidelines. These are the guidelines that are sent to examiners and kind of communicating to examiners around the use of AI and the ethical use of AI. The other is with the thesis preparation guidelines. So this is a guideline provided to HDR students in order to support them in terms of writing their thesis. And there are a couple of different points that are made in those changes to those guidelines. One around that have been talked about by Caroline and Zheng around the communication of research. That's obviously an incredibly important skill for researchers and HDR students to develop. That's both the written and verbal communication of research. And so candidates need to be aware that they're being assessed on their contribution to the research within the thesis. So this comes back to sort of key principles of research, and that is around transparency and disclosure. And so in those guidelines, they highlight the need for candidates and students to be very clear in their use of AI or AI tools. The other thing I think is probably helpful to let you know within those working groups and also as the steering committee, there's been a lot of discussion about what we mean when we talk about AI. Often generative AI and AI are used interchangeably. So you will see when these documents come out that they clearly articulate how we define AI and how we define generative AI. And as Caroline mentioned, I think what's probably important to highlight is that AI is not necessarily new, but people's access to AI and particularly generative AI and language models has drastically increased over recent years. With regards to research, the other point that has been discussed at length in these working groups is that a lot of research is governed by a number of external guidelines. Obviously, a key external guideline is the Australian Code for Responsible Conduct of Research, and the principles set out in that document provide really great guidance to researchers in terms of the use of AI within their own research. The other are obviously things like privacy laws, which are really, really important in terms of considerations in the use of AI. But one I suppose is most relevant to this discussion is authorship guidelines provided by journals, and Caroline highlighted that in terms of how some journals are approaching the use of AI. What I'm quite keen on from this group here actually is any other specific guidelines that you see important to ECU, so sort of ECU-centric guidelines that would be really supportive for researchers and research training. And then the last point I just wanted to highlight with regards to the working groups is when these working groups were established shortly after the sort of release of ChatGPT, there was a primary task that happened first off, which is around a SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of AI. And I would probably suggest that at the very start of that discussion, a lot of the talk around AI was talking about the substantial threats, the concerns associated with the use of AI, and a lot of these have been discussed already today. Things around the ethics, the privacy and security, transparency and disclosure, bias and fairness, human-centered values, contestability and accountability, and copyright, particularly with the use of generative AI. But that discussion, we are continuing to consider those threats or those concerns, but we are also now looking much more deeply into the opportunities with AI. And often some of these threats do end up becoming opportunities. There's been discussions around things like commercialization. And I think for many of you, if you engage with software tools, most software tools now are looking at how they can embed AI into their own commercial tools that they provide that support research. But there are also commercialization opportunities even internally within ECU. There's a number of academic staff members and others that have significant skills in AI and significant skills in generative AI. And so what was considered a threat or initially a threat also has significant opportunities across the university. And the last point I just wanted to highlight is that in terms of my role as Dean of Graduate Research in the university, I'm very aware that generative AI to support research is not going away, and it is something that we need to ensure that we train our research students on the productive and ethical use of AI. It is a really, really important part, or will become a really important part of digital literacy. And so we're kind of looking through how we can provide guidelines and support for students and researchers to be able to do that. So that's what that working group is working on. I'm keen to receive any feedback for anyone here, either now or through email later on, about any guidelines you see that would be supporting yourself in your own research. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Chris. And we look forward to the framework and the guidelines. If anyone has a comment or would like to ask a question, we have a few moments. If you would like to unmute, or if we have any further comments from Jun or Caroline. No. Trudy, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My interest is what it's doing to PhD students, and I guess my concern is that I'm seeing some of them using it, and I'm concerned they're not actually understanding what the material they're producing, and that they're in one case, I think she's seeing it as meaning that she doesn't really have to learn to write. And that seems to me to be a long way from what John Wayne's talking about. And I've talked to all of them about the limitations of the use, and some of them get it immediately. I've got a Noongar student who's doing something on Noongar knowledge, and she realises that she can't use it because it won't produce a Noongar knowledge analysis of what she comes across. But I am concerned with at least one of the international students that she's actually seeing it as a substitute for the academic learning advisor, or learning how to improve her own writing. And I just wonder what other people's experience is.
Chris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's a really important discussion to have, Trudy, and it's a really important discussion to have with supervisors and with students. And this is one of the reasons for one of the first guidelines that I thought to address is the thesis preparation guideline. And perhaps, we obviously need to look at how we can embed this training throughout the entirety of the research journey, not just be thinking about this at the very end of the research journey. And importantly, I think it's critical that candidates are aware that they are assessed on their contribution to the research, and they have to clearly be able to communicate that research. One of the benefits is we do have an oral exam or an oral assessment within the PhD. There is discussion in terms of what a research assessment actually looks like nationally, and we're kind of looking at this nationally across Australia around the thesis examination process. But I suppose this risk is again not necessarily new, because students have always had the access to things like editors. I know supervisors have provided a significant contribution to improve students' writing, and what we need to do is make sure that the students are aware of the importance of communicating research. I think that is one of the biggest things that is under threat with regards to generative language models, but more broadly, being able to communicate research, not just in your thesis, but being able to communicate it to the media and to the wider community. That is a really, really important part of doing a research degree. So I am looking at ways of where we can better embed those ethical considerations in terms of the entire research journey. But I think it's a really important discussion to have, and it's a really important discussion for supervisors to be having with their students they're supervising.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Trudy. In the interest of time, I'm sorry we don't have many more minutes left, but we would like just to give a wrap up of the progress of our read and publish agreements. So Ian Welsh is going to just go through that. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see some figures and ask Ian to talk to them.
Thanks, Jennifer. So yes, there wouldn't be an open access week session without a shameless plug for read and publish agreements. We're sharing that screen now, Jennifer.
I have.
Excellent.
That's your son's up on the screen now.
Well, I'll just stop sharing a picture of those guys because that's not going to be very informative for everyone.
I shared my slides. They should have come through.
No, I'll share mine now, just quickly. There we go.
Marie, what's that? Mario.
Everyone see that now?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So really good usage. So first of all, thank you for Caroline, to Caroline, Junwen and Chris Abyss for their time this morning. It's really appreciated giving a session for International Open Access Week. It's much appreciated. And as I said, an opportunity just to quickly highlight the really strong usage and take up of the read and publish agreements this year. So we've seen 125 articles so far this year published where ECU is a corresponding author to articles, and I've got the stats there in relation to usage per agreement. Then there's additional articles where ECU has co-authored a number of articles, and so we're looking at probably close to 300 articles in total published this year where ECU is either corresponding author or co-author on papers. There was, in comparison to last year, there was 150 articles in total. So we're getting close to double the amount of articles published through these agreements, which is great to hear. And based on sort of guesstimates and estimates around the cost per article, we're over $1.1 million worth of article processing charges that have been offset in relation to these agreements. So we're going to roll those agreements that we've currently got with these current publishers to next year. And there's likely to be some new agreements, 3 potential new agreements coming in through for ACM, ASME, and APA. So those agreements should be coming online. We're in the final stages of negotiating those agreements for next year, and so more information will come out through the various channels, Research Weekly, and various committees across the university, just to give people the details around those agreements and what they look like. Yeah, that's a bit of an overview and a sneak peek to what's likely to come for next year. But thank you all for your attendance this morning. We're at 9:59 now, so I'd just like to thank everyone for their attendance and for the presenters today. It's been a really informative and great session. So thank you and enjoy your week. Thank you, everyone.